Just when you thought the Cleveland Browns had finally figured out their quarterback situation, everything got flipped upside down. And honestly, the timing of this couldn't be more suspicious. Mary Kay Cabot just dropped a story that has Browns fans losing their minds. The headline alone was enough to send shockwaves through Cleveland. Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback with only 15 career college starts, is reportedly on the Browns' radar. And according to some NFL draft experts, he's supposedly better than Fernando Mendoza. Let that sink in for a moment. The same organization that just released a full cinematic promotional video declaring Shedeur Sanders as their franchise quarterback is now reportedly looking at another signal caller. The same front office that told everyone Shedeur only needed to beat out Deshaun Watson and Dylan Gabriel is apparently shopping for more competition. The same Browns that made us all believe the quarterback controversy was finally over might be creating an entirely new one. This isn't just a minor development. This is the kind of story that makes you question everything you thought you knew about Cleveland's direction. Because if they're seriously considering Ty Simpson, what does that say about their confidence in the guy they've been promoting all offseason? The reports claim multiple NFL draft experts are high on Simpson. Dan Orlovsky from ESPN apparently thinks he's the best quarterback in the entire draft class. Mike Tannenbaum, the former Jets general manager, says he's heard from teams that rate Simpson above the competition. These aren't random voices. These are people with legitimate NFL connections. But here's what makes this situation even more complicated. There's a personal connection between Ty Simpson and Todd Monken that nobody is talking about enough. And that connection might explain why this story suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Before we go any further, we need to talk about who Ty Simpson actually is. Because if you're not a hardcore college football fan, his name might not ring any bells. And honestly, that's part of what makes this whole situation so bizarre. Ty Simpson played quarterback at Alabama. But unlike most Crimson Tide quarterbacks who get drafted, Simpson wasn't a four-year starter who dominated the SEC. He only started 15 games during his entire college career. 15. That's barely more than one full season of experience at the highest level of college football. Now, does that mean he's not talented? Absolutely not. The physical tools are clearly there. He's got arm strength. He's got mobility. He's got the kind of raw athletic ability that makes scouts drool when they project what a player could become with proper NFL development. But raw is the key word here. This isn't a polished prospect ready to step in and lead a franchise from day one. This is a project, a development piece, the kind of quarterback you take when you're willing to wait 2 or 3 years for potential to become production. So why are NFL experts suddenly so high on him? Part of it comes down to upside. In a draft class that many consider weak at the quarterback position, Simpson represents the highest ceiling. He might not have the most experience, but he has the most room to grow. And for teams that value potential over polish, that's an attractive combination. Dan Orlovsky went on record saying Simpson is the best quarterback in this draft class. That's a bold statement from someone who watches film for a living. Mike Tannenbaum backed that up by revealing he's heard similar sentiments from actual NFL teams doing their evaluations. But here's the part that should concern Browns fans the most. There's a direct connection between Ty Simpson and Todd Monken that goes beyond football. Reports indicate that Monken has a relationship with Simpson's father. They know each other personally. And in the NFL, personal connections often influence personnel decisions more than people want to admit. Does that mean Monken is pushing for Cleveland to draft Simpson? We can't say that for certain, but the connection exists. And now there's a story circulating about the Browns having Simpson on their radar. The timing feels like more than coincidence. Let's call this what it is. If the Browns are seriously considering drafting Ty Simpson, they're essentially betraying everything they told us about Shedeur Sanders. Think about what happened just weeks ago. The Cleveland Browns released a professionally produced promotional video featuring Shedeur as their franchise quarterback, not as a competitor, not as a possibility, as the guy, the chosen one, the future of the franchise. That video highlighted his journey from draft night disappointment to rookie Pro Bowl selection. It showcased his connection to Harold Fannin Jr. It emphasized his work ethic, his preparation habits, his readiness to lead. The production quality alone told us this wasn't some throwaway content. This was an organizational statement. And now we're supposed to believe they're looking at another quarterback in the first round. The original plan seemed clear. Shedeur was going to compete for the starting job against Deshaun Watson and Dillon Gabriel. That was the competition. 3 quarterbacks battling it out in training camp, with Shedeur positioned as the favorite based on his rookie performance. Adding Ty Simpson to that mix changes everything. It signals that the organization might not trust Shedeur as much as they publicly claimed. It suggests that all those promotional materials were more about content engagement than actual commitment. It raises questions about whether Cleveland's front office says one thing while believing another. Browns fans have been burned before. They've watched this franchise promise stability at quarterback only to change direction at the first sign of doubt. They've seen franchise quarterbacks get replaced before they ever had a real chance to develop. The pattern is exhausting. And now, despite all the Shedeur promotion, despite the Pro Bowl selection, despite the chemistry with young playmakers, there are reports about another quarterback entering the conversation. Reports that make you wonder if anything the Browns say publicly can actually be trusted. We need to address the elephant in the room, because the source of this entire story raises some serious questions about journalistic integrity and the state of Cleveland sports media. Mary Kay Cabot published the Ty Simpson article claiming he's on the Browns' radar and that NFL experts rate him above Fernando Mendoza. The headline was explosive. The implications were significant. It was exactly the kind of story that generates massive engagement from a fan base desperate for quarterback clarity. But here's where things get interesting. Just hours after publishing that article, Mary Kay went on local radio. And what she said during that interview completely contradicted the energy of her written piece. She admitted she doesn't actually think the Browns will draft Ty Simpson. She acknowledged that he'll probably end up somewhere else. She essentially walked back the entire premise of her own story. So which is it? You can't publish an article suggesting there's a very high chance Simpson comes to Cleveland and then go on air saying he'll probably end up elsewhere. That's not journalism. That's clickbait. That's manufacturing controversy for engagement while knowing the actual substance doesn't support the headline. This pattern has frustrated Browns fans for years. The Cleveland media seems more interested in generating clicks than providing accurate information. They push narratives that stir up emotions, get people arguing in comment sections, and drive traffic to their platforms. Then, when confronted about the accuracy, they retreat to safe positions that contradict their original reporting. It's exhausting and it's damaging. Because now Browns fans have to sort through conflicting information, trying to figure out what's actually happening with their team. Is Ty Simpson really a serious target? Or is this just another manufactured controversy designed to keep people clicking and commenting? The frustration is understandable. When you can't trust the reporters covering your team to give you straight information, how are you supposed to know what to believe? When headlines say one thing and interviews say another, where does the truth actually lie? Mary Kay acknowledged the Browns are doing their work on quarterbacks. She mentioned they might consider Simpson if he falls to certain picks, but she also made clear that she doesn't expect it to happen. That kind of mixed messaging creates confusion rather than clarity. The Ty Simpson story included an interesting comparison that deserves more attention. According to the NFL draft experts quoted in Mary Kay's article, Simpson is better than Fernando Mendoza. And that comparison opens up a fascinating debate about how we evaluate quarterback prospects. Fernando Mendoza just won a national championship with Indiana. On paper, that's an incredible accomplishment that should put him near the top of every draft board. A championship-winning quarterback with big game experience seems like exactly what NFL teams should want. But here's the thing about Mendoza that people don't discuss enough. He had arguably the best offensive line in college football protecting him. That Indiana front dominated every team they faced. Mendoza had days to throw the ball while his blockers pancaked defenders into the turf. Does that diminish what he accomplished? That's the million-dollar question. Some analysts argue that any competent quarterback would have succeeded behind that line. When you've got 5 seconds to survey the field on every dropback, making reads becomes significantly easier. When defenders can't get within 10 yards of you, accuracy becomes more manageable. When your running game consistently moves the chains, play action becomes almost unfair. Others counter that Mendoza still had to make the throws. He still had to read defenses. He still had to lead a team to a national championship regardless of who was blocking for him. Plenty of quarterbacks have had great offensive lines and still failed to win at the highest level. The Raiders apparently believe in Mendoza enough to build their own steel curtain around him. They're investing heavily in offensive line talent to recreate the conditions that made him successful at Indiana. That's a legitimate strategy. If a quarterback thrives with protection, give him protection. But it also raises questions about his ability to perform when things break down. What happens when the pocket collapses? What happens when he faces pressure he didn't see in college? What happens when the protection isn't perfect? Ty Simpson, by contrast, had to create more on his own at Alabama. The Crimson Tide didn't always have dominant offensive line play during his time there. He learned to navigate pressure, extend plays, and make something out of nothing. That experience might translate better to NFL reality where protection is never guaranteed. The comparison matters because it speaks to different philosophies about quarterback evaluation. Do you take the proven winner with questions about his supporting cast? Or do you take the raw talent who showed flashes without the same infrastructure? Cleveland's draft position makes this entire situation even more complicated. They're not just sitting with one valuable pick. They've got multiple opportunities to address the roster, and how they use those picks will tell us everything about their actual priorities. The Browns hold the 6th overall selection. That's premium draft capital, the kind of pick that gets you a blue-chip prospect who can transform your franchise. It's also the kind of pick that generates trade interest from teams wanting to move up for their guy. Mary Kay Cabot has suggested the Browns might look to trade down from 6 unless they decide Ty Simpson is their target. That indicates the organization might not see a can't-miss prospect at that spot who fits their needs. Trading down would accumulate more picks while still potentially landing quality players. But here's where it gets interesting. The Browns also have pick 24 and pick 39. Those are still premium selections. Not quite the same value as top 10, but absolutely the kind of picks that land impact players. If Ty Simpson falls past the first few picks, he could potentially be available at 24. That's the scenario Mary Kay mentioned where the Browns might seriously consider him. A first-round quarterback at 24 costs less draft capital than one at 6 while still getting a talented prospect. And if Simpson somehow slides to 39, that would be incredible value for a player some experts consider the best quarterback in the class. It would also mean the Browns could address other needs at 6 and 24 before adding quarterback depth later. The problem is that all of this speculation creates uncertainty around Shedeur's position. If the Browns are seriously mapping out scenarios where they draft Ty Simpson, It means they're not fully committed to the quarterback already on their roster. That's the message this sends regardless of how they try to spin it. Meanwhile, other quarterback names have entered the conversation. Drew Aller has been mentioned as a potential mid-round target. Talon Green apparently has a tantalizing skill set that makes him worth developing. These aren't first-round names, but they represent the same principle. The Browns are looking at quarterbacks despite having Shedeur. The owners' meetings in Phoenix should provide more clarity. Mary Kay will have opportunities to question the Haslams, Andrew Berry, and Todd Monken directly. Maybe we'll get real answers about the organization's quarterback plans. Or maybe we'll get more corporate speak that sounds good without actually saying anything. Step back from the Ty Simpson specifics and look at the bigger picture. What does it say about an organization that potentially drafts quarterbacks every single year? Because that's the pattern Cleveland seems to be following. They drafted Shedeur Sanders. He showed promise as a rookie, made the Pro Bowl, built chemistry with young playmakers, did everything a fifth-round pick could possibly do to prove he belongs, and the organization's response, apparently to immediately start evaluating his potential replacements. That's not how you build quarterback stability. That's not how you develop confidence in a young signal caller. That's not how successful franchises operate. Look at the teams that have sustained success in the NFL. They find their quarterback and they commit. They don't hedge every offseason. They don't constantly evaluate alternatives. They put resources around their guy and let him develop without looking over his shoulder every single day. The Browns seem incapable of that commitment. And honestly, can you blame them given their history? This franchise has been searching for a quarterback since they returned in 1999. They've tried everything: high draft picks, veteran acquisitions, project development. Nothing has worked long enough to create stability. The position has been cursed for over 2 decades. But at some point, the constant churning becomes part of the problem rather than the solution. When young quarterbacks know they're already being evaluated for replacement before their second season starts, how does that affect their confidence? How does that affect their development? How does that affect their willingness to commit long-term to the organization? Deshaun Watson's contract still haunts this franchise. $230 million guaranteed to a quarterback who hasn't justified that investment on the field. That financial commitment should have created stability. Instead, it created a situation where the Browns are simultaneously paying elite quarterback money while searching for a different answer. Dillon Gabriel was supposed to provide depth and competition. Now he's potentially competing against both Shedeur and whoever the Browns draft. How does that affect his development? How does that affect his trade value if they decide to move on? The quarterback room is becoming crowded with uncertainty rather than clarity, and adding Ty Simpson to the mix would only make it more chaotic. So where does this leave Shedeur Sanders, the fifth-round pick who exceeded every expectation, the rookie Pro Bowler who seemed to have secured his position, the quarterback the Browns publicly declared as their franchise future? Honestly, his position looks a lot less secure than it did a week ago. The promotional video feels hollow now. All that talk about draft position not defining the journey rings differently when the organization is actively scouting potential replacements. The commitment seemed real until reports emerged suggesting otherwise. Shedeur did everything right. He stayed quiet during the offseason. He worked with his receivers. He developed chemistry with his teammates. He avoided controversy and focused on improvement. That's exactly what you want from a young quarterback trying to establish himself. And his reward for that professionalism: stories about the Browns targeting other quarterbacks, reports about Ty Simpson being better than the competition, speculation about first-round picks being used on his potential replacement. The anybody but Shedeur crowd in Cleveland media must be celebrating. They pushed for Kyler Murray. They begged for Malik Willis. They dreamed about J.J. McCarthy. Now they've got new ammunition. Now they can point to Ty Simpson as the answer while dismissing everything Shedeur accomplished. But here's what they're missing. Shedeur Sanders already produced in the NFL. He already showed he can play at this level. Ty Simpson has 15 college starts and 0 professional snaps. The potential might be higher, but the proven production isn't even close. That's the gamble the Browns would be making, trading known quantity for unknown potential, betting on ceiling over floor. Hoping that development pays off when they already have someone who developed faster than expected. Maybe Ty Simpson becomes a franchise quarterback. Maybe the raw tools translate into NFL success. Maybe the connection to Todd Monken helps his transition. Anything is possible. But maybe isn't certainty, and Cleveland has been burned by maybe too many times. This entire situation exposes something deeper than quarterback evaluation. It reveals a fundamental trust crisis between the Browns organization, their media, and their fan base. Browns fans can't trust what the organization says publicly. The Shedeur promotional video suggested commitment. The Ty Simpson reports suggest otherwise. Which message is true? Both can't be accurate simultaneously. Either the Browns are fully committed to Shedeur or they're actively seeking alternatives. The mixed signals create confusion that erodes confidence. Browns fans can't trust their local media to provide accurate information. Mary Kay Cabot publishes explosive headlines, then walks them back hours later. The gap between written content and spoken interviews reveals a priority on engagement over accuracy. When reporters contradict themselves, credibility disappears. And perhaps most damaging, Browns fans can't trust that patience will be rewarded. They've been told to trust the process before. They've been promised stability before. They've been assured that this time would be different before. And every time something changes, someone new enters the picture. The plan shifts. The cycle repeats. 25+ years of quarterback instability does that to a fan base. It creates skepticism that's difficult to overcome. It makes every positive development feel temporary because experience has taught them that change is always coming. The Ty Simpson story might amount to nothing. The Browns might stick with Shedeur exactly as they've publicly stated. This could all be media-manufactured controversy with no actual substance behind it. But the fact that Browns fans immediately believe the worst says everything about the trust that's been destroyed over decades of disappointment. They've been conditioned to expect chaos. They've learned that organizational statements mean nothing until proven otherwise. They've watched too many franchise quarterbacks become footnotes. The Cleveland Browns find themselves at a crossroads that feels painfully familiar. Another offseason, another quarterback controversy, another round of speculation about who will actually lead this franchise into the future. Shedeur Sanders proved himself as a rookie. He earned a Pro Bowl selection. He built chemistry with young weapons. He did everything a fifth-round pick could possibly do to establish himself as the answer. And yet here we are, discussing whether the Browns might draft his replacement before he even gets a full season as the starter. Ty Simpson might be a tremendous prospect. The raw tools are there. The upside is appealing. The connection to Todd Monken adds an interesting wrinkle. But he's also a project with minimal college experience facing questions about whether his potential will translate to professional production. The Fernando Mendoza comparison raises legitimate questions about quarterback evaluation. Do you take the championship winner with elite supporting cast questions? Do you take the raw talent who created more on his own? Do you trust production or potential? These debates will continue throughout draft season. Mary Kay Cabot's reporting has muddied the waters rather than clearing them. Publishing explosive content, then contradicting it on air helps nobody. Browns fans deserve accurate information, not engagement farming disguised as journalism. The credibility issues with Cleveland media make every story harder to evaluate. The draft picks are valuable. Number 6, 24 and 39 represent significant capital that could transform the roster. How the Browns use those selections will reveal their true priorities regardless of what they say publicly. Actions speak louder than promotional videos. The owners' meetings might provide clarity, or they might provide more corporate speak that sounds good without actually committing to anything. Browns fans have learned to expect the latter while hopping for the former. What happens next will define Cleveland's direction for years to come. Do they commit fully to Shedeur Sanders and build around him? Do they hedge their bets by adding another quarterback? Do they trade down and accumulate assets? Every option carries risk. Every choice eliminates alternatives. The one certainty is that Browns fans deserve better than constant uncertainty. They deserve an organization that says what it means and means what it says. They deserve media that prioritizes accuracy over engagement. They deserve a franchise that commits to a direction and follows through. Whether they'll actually get any of that remains the biggest question of all. Cleveland has been waiting decades for quarterback stability. The search continues. The debates rage on. The uncertainty persists. And somewhere in all the noise, Shedeur Sanders and Ty Simpson represent two very different answers to the same question. Who will lead the Cleveland Browns into the future? After everything we've seen, after all the reports and contradictions and promotional content, the honest answer is that nobody actually knows. And that uncertainty might be the most Cleveland thing of all. The story is far from over. The draft approaches. The owners' meetings loom. The decisions that shape this franchise's future will be made soon. And when they are, everything we've discussed will either be validated or exposed as manufactured drama. Until then, Browns fans wait. Again, still, always. Some things in Cleveland never seem to change.